So if Ebenezer Scrooge is the star of my fan fiction, I've always wanted to see a part two, like the nice Scrooge. Like, what are all the great things that the nice Scrooge does after he turns good at the end of A Christmas Carol? So, first under who? Ebenezer Scrooge. That's his name. Ebenezer is his first name, Scrooge is his last name. And we need adjectives that describe this character's appearance and personality. So, under his looks, he is old, gray hair, wrinkly skin, kind of tiny bloodshot eyes. And I'm taking these are just descriptions of what he kind of looks like. He also has yellow teeth because he lives in England in the 1800s. They all had yellow teeth if they still had teeth. He's hunched over. Scrawny. Scrawny means skinny but also kind of weak skinny. Wears a long black coat and matching top hat. Has a black cane with a gold handle. And now we're going to go with personality. His personality has changed. In my story, it's the good Ebenezer Scrooge. So he is going to be happy, kind, generous, almost jolly, jokes with everybody, has time to talk with everyone. I know I said generous, but I'm also going to say that he's charitable, which means he gives to charities and he's kind to others in that way. And now, you don't have to do this out of order because I'm realizing I'm giving a lot of adjectives about his personality and coming down to the bottom, how do others treat him? That's a good question to maybe answer now. Because he's kind and generous and charitable, other people love him. Because remember, this is my fan fiction. I'm in this fan fiction that I'm writing about Ebenezer Scrooge. It's a sequel to the first story. And at the end of the first story, he turns good. So this is the good Scrooge. This is the story of the happy good Scrooge. So other people love him. Children play with him in the streets. Passers-by, people who walk by him, say hello with a smile. The poor are not afraid to ask him for help. His nephew, Fred, sees him all the time, and they have dinner every week together. His employee, Bob Cratchit, Tiny Tim's son. Bob Cratchit is his best friend, and Tiny Tim calls him Uncle Scrooge. And the reason why I'm describing all of these things and writing about this character is because I'm developing details that I'm going to be able to insert into my fan fiction later. And that's the important part. Having all these details laid out ahead of time helps us, and it helps us figure out where we're going to put this description in. I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to fill in the rest of this chart. And after I do, I'll show you some of the other things that I wrote. All right, we've now time traveled to the future, and I've filled out this chart completely. So we already started with the who. I'm now going to move down to the what. Actions that shows his personalities. Scrooge will create many scholarships for orphans so they can go to college or be apprentices so they can have better lives. He pays for Tiny Tim's medicine so Tim gets better. Bob is now his business partner, so he makes a lot more money than he did. Scrooge also now works in Parliament and is pushing for better working conditions and a minimum wage because there isn't one at this time. Speaking of this time, it is London, England in 1843, which was a time of extremely overpopulated cities, poverty, and industrialization, which means there's factories. London was the most densely populated city in the world. People lived in buildings with no plumbing or heat. Fires were very common. Crime was even more common. Very few people had jobs that paid enough to survive because factories paid so little. This was a time where factories were brand new and factories mass produced stuff that smiths used to make, like blacksmiths, coppersmiths, and it put those people out of jobs. And those jobs used to sustain them and an entire family. But now these factory wages are so low, they can't support families. So a lot of people turned to crime because it was all they could do. Strangely, this was also a time where the wealthy class was super wealthy because they weren't paying a lot in wages, and there weren't many laws forcing them to give people good jobs. In fact, people only had one day off a year paid, and that was Easter. Excuse me, that was Christmas Day. Easter they were paid, but it was on a Sunday, so it wasn't a day off. A little bit more on the where. It's London, England, and my description with adjectives is it's a large city made up of tall brick buildings, rows of grand houses with cherry blossom trees lining the cobblestone streets, but also the other half of the city is dirty, cold, wet, full of garbage and human waste in the streets. Coal fires in every house created horrible smog and air pollution that turned everything black with soot. But now we're coming down to why is Scrooge acting the way he is? Remember, this is my sequel, so it's the good Scrooge now. And I'm saying that Scrooge is acting kind and charitable because he was successfully changed into a kind person by the three ghosts of Christmas. He now sees that has a great potential for goodness, even though he's very old, and he's making every day count in his kindness and generosity. We went down a little bit before on how people treat him because I did that right after the what who is he, and that was really because it seemed like that was a good thing. You can skip around when you do this chart, but you're going to do this for your character. You're going to take the character from your mentor text that you want to be the main character in your story. Think about your story and give me an elaboration like this, because tomorrow we're going to write it as an actual character elaboration narrative. Good luck and happy writing.